Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Imam Initiative, a series about being an Imam in the West. This is part 4 of Sheikh Faruq Post's contribution to the series, in which he answers personal questions as well as questions about politics, collaborating, and Dawah.
As for the personal questions, Brother Sajid, regarding ibtila, then the student of knowledge and the Imam constantly has to remind himself that whatever ibtila, whatever trial or tribulation that we may be experiencing is nothing compared to the tests, trials, and tribulations that the prophets and messengers faced before us. Especially when the prophets and messengers were giving dawah. When we constantly remind ourselves of this, it makes dealing with any difficulties or ibtila'at that we may be experiencing, it makes it easier for us to digest and easier for us to deal with. And on one's days off, an imam or religious scholar needs to definitely spend some time to wind down. He needs some time for seclusion, some time alone to meditate, think, regroup, relax, put things back into perspective, look at things from the outside in instead of looking at things from inside out. And me personally, my dealings with the masajid outside of my position as an imam is as an advisor. It is an advisory role in which I would, recommend some of the board members, some of the imams, some of the teachers, some beneficial programs that they can do, other things that they can do for outreach. And as I mentioned earlier, I strongly believe that we need to structure our masajid differently from the administrative aspect and place the imams, religious scholars, and religious directors as the presidents, or they should be in charge of the masajid. And I believe the cause of many of the masajid in the West not having imams is because many graduates or students don't want to deal with the politics of the boards and those who are unqualified to run the masajid. Brothers and sisters, my brother Sajid, masajid are not businesses or corporations, and they should not be run or managed as corporations or businesses. When you have businessmen running the affairs of the masjid, then their main concern is not making better worshippers of Allah. Their main concern is bringing in as much money as they can, regardless of what is being taught in the masjid. They don't care what ideology or creed their speakers are teaching the people, as long as the money keeps on rolling in. So masajid are places of worship, and those who know best how to worship Allah, how to educate the people about how to worship Allah, should be running the masajid and managing the masajid. So the question is, Sajid, why do we as Muslims need to follow the Western model of structuring our masajid administratively when we have in Islam the best of ways and guidelines to structure our masajid? So when dealing with masjid administrators, the imam needs to be serious. He needs to be stern and assertive and establish his authority, his knowledge, and know-how and experience. And some hazards that one should be aware about are dealing with administrators that may have modern or liberal agendas, where they believe that Islam needs to be changed to suit our days and times. And I believe most imams have good relations with administrators and employers, and that the imam should strive to have good relations, even if they differ in some issues and have differences, and the imam should always have the best of character and the best of manners when dealing with other people. If the administration takes a stance on an issue against imam's advice, then the imam should weigh out the pros and cons, the benefits and harms about how to deal with it, and make his choice. A lot of times it's not really big issues that in my experience, that the imam and the administrative board may differ in, and Moving on, I believe an imam should familiarize himself with the local politics and what is happening. Familiarize himself. I'm not saying study it for hours and hours at hand. Familiarize yourself with the local politics, right? Know what's going on in your locality and what is happening in your area, and try to address these issues in their khutbahs, but maybe one sentence, two sentences, three sentences in the khutbahs, and tie them with lessons from the Quran and Sunnah, but only focusing on politics in the khutbah. To me, this is a waste of our congregants' time, and when the congregants come for Jummah, they need to be reminded about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and hear some verses from Quran and hear some hadith about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If they want to hear about politics or news, they can go home and turn on their TVs, or they can read the news feed on their smartphones. And me personally, I don't have an issue speaking about any of those issues you mentioned, polygyny or polygamy or jihad or transgenderism or homosexuality, but they need to be done with wisdom, and you need to know your audience, who you're speaking to. And that's very important. And I believe all people, regardless of their faith, should cooperate upon social issues to make our communities better, to make our communities drug free, to make our communities crime free, to make our communities free of sexually transmitted diseases, AIDS, all of these things. And I believe that imams should invite all people interested to learn about Islam, invite all people to the masjid to learn more about Islam and the Muslims and their practices, and to dispel doubts and misconceptions people may have about us. I believe imams should be connected to the local mayors, governors, authorities, police. And me personally, I've never had anyone from the FBI approach me, and if they did, I would welcome them and show them what we do. This is what we do in the masjid. We pray 5 times a day. We read Quran. We make Hajj. We fast. So a real Muslim has nothing to hide and nothing to fear, nothing to be afraid of except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Muslim who is not truly practicing his religion, who is deceiving, who is lying, who is cheating, then he would be the one who may be afraid or scared to meet with these types of individuals, such as the FBI or the authorities. Me personally, I've been interviewed by the local media in Maryland, and it's been great. It's been excellent. And my humble opinion is that we need more qualified students of knowledge to step up, to speak to the media, to do TV interviews, to do radio interviews, to write newspaper articles. Unfortunately, Sajid, many of our brothers upon the Sunnah are hesitant to do so. So what happens? So in their place, who do you find going to seize these opportunities to talk to the media and write articles in the newspaper? You find the liberal Muslims, the modern Muslims, or the progressive Muslims jumping on every opportunity they get, and they do not represent Islam correctly. So we should try to flood the newspapers and flood the TV stations with qualified students of knowledge upon the Sunnah who can speak about issues which need to be addressed here in the West. The Muslim, he should always consider making hijrah. The Muslim should always consider making hijrah to a place in which he can practice his Islam better, no matter where it is in the world. And moving on to the other questions, the advantages of attending Islamic conferences are many. From the greatest of these advantages is networking and building connections in the Muslim community. Me personally, I'm not a member of any of those organizations. Actually, I have founded an Islamic Dawah organization called Islamic Ministries and Community Development, based out of Hagerstown, Maryland. Our website is www.imacd.org, and we focus on giving dawah to non-Muslims, providing community services. We have a regular food pantry. We give out school bags to the kids in school. We give out regular dawah materials. We distribute and print dawah materials and small booklets. We send dawah materials and booklets to the brothers incarcerated. And We meet with the local media, the newspaper on a regular basis. So I would advise the students of knowledge to create your own venues, to create your own organizations to give dawah and convey your knowledge solely that you can control what you want to do, you can control what you want to say, and you can control what you want to teach. And me personally, I love to cooperate with all imams in giving dawah to non-Muslims and working on establishing institutes and programs that benefit Islam and the Muslims here in the West, such as establishing a Muslim credit union, such as establishing endowment funds, such as establishing a Ministry of Islamic Affairs for each state, such as establishing Islamic tribunals and the such as establishing courthouses where Muslims can come and arbitrate their civil issues. And me personally, moving on to the other questions you asked, brother Sajid, I don't know if I've been declared as an innovator, a disbeliever, or the likes, nor do I care. Nor do I pay attention to any of what people are saying about me. Our prophets and messengers were called madmen. They were called crazy. They were called mad poets. They were called things which were similar, and they kept giving their dawah, and they kept conveying the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they kept their tawakkul and their dependence and reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and didn't pay attention to what people said. So I would remind and advise my brothers studying overseas right now to ignore these type of people. And these are the advice from our shuyukh. These are the advice from our scholars. Sheikh Fawzan, the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Wasi Allah Abbas, Sheikh Muhammad Ali Adam. Many of the scholars that I've met, they all advise us, don't busy yourselves with qila wa qal. Do not busy yourself with people who are talking about people. And I believe that the du'at need to start refuting the atheists. Yes, Sajid, I believe the du'at need to start refuting and rebutting if they want to focus on rebuttals and refutations and things like this, which I personally believe that they can busy themselves doing other things which are more beneficial to the masajid and more beneficial to the servants of Allah. But if they want to write refutations and rebuttals and things like this, why don't they write rebuttals about the Buddhists? Those who are slaughtering our brothers in Burma, or the Hindus, those who are slaughtering our brothers in India and other parts in the world, and refute them and show how the real extremists and the real terrorists, those who are actually oppressing and transgressing against Muslims. So refute the Buddhists, the atheists, the Hindus, the Jews, the Christians, and non-Muslims before they focus on refuting Muslims here in America. One thing that we need to be reminded about is that living in the West as Muslims, we're minorities. And Islamic unity is fundamental and extremely important. And at the same time, speaking and clarifying the truth is even more important. So I humbly believe that anyone, no matter who it is, can be rebutted, be refuted, but it should be done with knowledge, it should be done with wisdom, it should be done with considering the harms and benefits, and it should be done with manners, etiquettes, good speech, and good words, not aimed at defaming one's character or defaming one's or destroying one's reputation, not done by name calling, swearing, cursing, or the likes, talking about one's family, talking about one's personal life, and things like this. And moving on to the other questions you asked, Brother Sajid, interfaith, which me personally, I don't like the usage of that word just because it is confusing to many people. But interfaith is of two types. One type of interfaith is that those participating in these type of gatherings and dialogues, they actually believe that they are all brothers in faith and they all worship the same Lord and they are all promised goodness and promised the paradise. And many of them abandon some of their beliefs or religious practices to appease to people of other faiths. This type of interfaith is extremely dangerous and completely false, in which the imams and students of knowledge need to rebut and need to refute and need to not participate in. The other type of interfaith is the type of interfaith in which people of different faiths, holding on to their beliefs, holding on to their morals and principles and religious teachings, where they work together upon social issues without leaving or abandoning any aspects of their faith. So, for example, people of different faiths from the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Muslim faith work together to try to stop the teaching of the evolution theory within the schools, or stop the propagation of the transgender agenda or homosexual agenda within the schools. And if the interfaith gathering is of this second type that I mentioned, then I wouldn't see a problem with attending, as long as one was not attending another faith group's worship activities. And me personally, I have been to many schools, universities, and hospitals to speak about Islam. We've actually had courses started in some of the universities, in which we had the opportunity to teach people about the articles of faith and important practices in Islam. And I believe imams should seize these opportunities whenever they are available. Moving on to the last set of questions you had, brother. May Allah bless you and reward you for this great initiative. Street dawah. I believe personally that street dawah is very beneficial in the sense that it makes the Muslims and their message of Islam visible to non-Muslims, and as well as Muslims. To the non-Muslims, it will give them an opportunity to ask Muslims questions and have many of their doubts and misconceptions removed. And at the same time, when Muslims see other Muslims in the street giving dawah, it will boost their morale and give Muslims who may be weak in iman or weak in faith, it will give them confidence in themselves and maybe actually want to join people in giving dawah and sharing the light of Islam. So I believe street dawah and having a visible presence within our communities is very important to us in America, especially considering the environment and the things going on now in America. I believe the reason why there is so much Islamophobia and hatred and bigotry and discrimination towards Muslims is because we haven't been doing enough dawah. We've been isolating ourselves from the greater community, okay, and just isolating ourselves in our Muslim community, and we don't want to interact with non-Muslims. So I believe the actual reason behind why there is so much of this, anti-Islamic, you know, hatred and things like this is because Muslims aren't doing enough dawah. So we need to flood the streets with street dawah. We need to put up billboards about the good and wholesome and righteous practices about Islam. We need to have vans driving around in the street, giving people this messaging, this subliminal messaging, so that we can change the narrative that the masses have about Islam in the Muslims. And I believe the Imam or Da'i should participate in street dawah occasionally to show his team, his dawah team or his crew, how to give dawah and how to interact with the people. I mean, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave dawah in Mecca. He gave dawah in front of the Kaaba to all of his tribesmen, all of his relatives. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he walked to Taif, he was giving dawah in the paths, in the mountains, in the streets, anybody in the towns, anybody he came across, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was giving dawah. So an imam or a student of knowledge shouldn't be so prideful or arrogant and say, well, it's a waste of time to give dawah in the streets and things like this. It was the practice of the prophets and messengers. And me personally, I believe open houses are great events that we should try to do more to help show the message and the beauty of Islam and help clear up the Islamophobia in our local areas. So, with that, inshallah, I hope that whatever we shared with you today, my brother Sajid, and all of the other brothers or sisters who may be listening, I hope that what we shared with you all is beneficial. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and from you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place it upon our in your scale of good deeds on the day of resurrection. Jazakallah khair wa barakallahu feek, my brother. May Allah bless you and reward you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.